Welcome to Microcollege. This week on the podcast, we are honored and excited to have a couple of guests who are current students of Deep Springs College. This is Ben Samuels and Max Feigelson, who happen to be graduates of the same high school in Brooklyn. They're speaking to us in their summer break between their first and second years of Deep Springs 2-year program. And to offer us a student perspective on this really important example of the microcollege, a really key inspiration for Thoreau College here. So thank you guys for joining us today.
Good to be here.
Great to be here.
Yeah. So I think some things I want to do today is to have you give a fresh description to someone who hasn't heard about Deep Springs, what it is. Including, Ben, you're the new student chair of the communications committee. So this is sort of your job, right? In your role in the college. So you're the right person for the job. But before we do that, on the Microcollege podcast, we really begin every conversation with people's own biographies. And usually we're talking to people who are a little bit older and ask them what they were doing when they're 18 to 21 years old, which is, you're kind of in that phase right now. So, but maybe if I could ask each of you to reflect a bit on your education and just what in your life trajectory attracted you, inspired you to do something as unusual as Deep Springs College. Ben, you want to start?
Ben, you want to give the introduction?
You want me to give the brief Deep Springs introduction first?
No, let's start with your story, actually. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, I went to Bard High School with Max, which is like another kind of alternative-ish education. The idea there is that you do 2 years of high school courses. You get like your basic requirements, and then your junior and senior year, you spend doing college level classes. So you have supposedly, college level professors teaching college level courses, and the credit sometimes, it's usually not transferable, but the idea is nice and the classes are supposed to be challenging, all that. So I went there for 3 years. So I went for my until junior year when I applied to Deep Springs, and I like that. I like the idea of Bard. I like that it gave the students agency, but at the same time, I started to feel like a city was maybe not the ideal setting to do it. It's like it's kind of hard to build community. It's kind of stifling. It felt like the responsibility that the school was giving the students wasn't being capitalized on. It wasn't being used to build anything. So I was like, all right, I heard about Deep Springs, and I was like, well, this seems like it seems like a place that could give the students the same amount of responsibility and freedom, which feels like a good thing, but also at the same time the push to do something productive with the freedom. So I left after my junior year and came to Deep Springs.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you went a little bit earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still trying to get my high school diploma, which I'm sure it is possible to get, but met with no success so far.
Cool, wonderful. And so that's an added wrinkle to it, actually. So I mean, your family, your other people in your life, like what was their response to that? Were they supportive? Were they, how is this interacted with the rest of your world?
Well, it was I think it was a little sudden, because, I sort of applied my junior year. It was kind of a long shot. I was prepared to spend another year at Bard, but then I got in, and the deadlines are kind of weird, because you have to have people on campus year round.
Yeah.
So you have to come in earlier than other schools. So I think I learned, I don't know.
Someone's got to milk the cows, right? And
right,
feed the livestock, right? So you can't
exactly
water the fields. Yeah.
So, you don't get a summer break. So I think I learned like, a couple months before. I can't remember, but it felt like a very quick turnaround. Yeah. So I think they were shocked more than anything.
Cool. Thank you. So yeah, Max, what about you? How bring us up to the moment of you heading off to Deep Springs. Where did this come from, and how did that fit into your development as a person?
Well, unlike Ben, I'm not a high school dropout. I went through all 4 years of Bard and I loved them. I really loved Bard. I think basically all of my friends from Bard really appreciate it. Um, I think that set everyone up to be kind of cynical about the college that they went to, which I think is a good thing for most schools. I don't think I'm very cynical about Deep Springs yet, though. Um, I I went through the normal college application process in senior year, but my family and I were pretty got into this like headspace where we thought it's an impossibly competitive process, so you might as well do like spend every minute of your life applying. So as COVID, didn't really have anything else to do, so I applied to 22 schools, and Deep Strings is one of them. I think the ending, like Google Docs, ended up being like 60 pages of essays because these weren't all just like Common App schools. Um, the the I like poured my heart into the Deep Strings application. I like rewrote all my essays a bunch of times. I knew it was the only place I was really excited about going. Um, and then I got in. Ben and I were actually also on our app visit together, which is when we visit the school for 5 days and kind of just like see what it's like. Um, but yeah, it was a very intensive process, and I was very happy to get in. Why did I do it? Well, uh, I was kind of disappointed with college websites in general. Like it was COVID, so I didn't have any time to actually go to schools. So I just saw the same kind of few words on college websites. I was really disturbed by the same fonts on college websites and the same graphic designs. Um, and the same kind of like nice sliding transitions without like real substance. But Deep Springs' website was like very generic, very kind of like single color, we like it, but with very like enticing substance to what the college was offering that was completely different from anything else. So yeah, I discovered the school basically by accident. But like my follow through was completely like through like admiration of the school's mission and how I wanted to contribute to it.
So what did you see in that substance? What about the mission that really stood out to you?
Uh, well, it seems to be the only school that didn't put student comfort at first priority. Like every school in their presentation to the outside world makes sure to emphasize the facilities and the comfort that you will receive, like the state-of-the-art dormitory or the new fitness center or the library or something like that. That's all very appealing if you're like going to the school for like a week. But I imagine that after that, you're gonna look for something a little bit um, more. And so Deep Springs has nothing very appealing from like a visual or a comfort perspective. Like the dorms are kind of shoddy. I like them a lot though, but I don't know. There's nothing really from the outside that makes Deep Springs look like a vacation resort of any sort. It's just that like the students are more active. I think like socially and intellectually than any place I've been, and they're more driven to like make the school something like beautiful, even if it's not through like donations.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? That what you're saying about the kind of the physical environment and the relationship to comfort, right? If you talk to people who are in leadership positions at colleges and universities, making the facilities appealing, making them making it comfortable, the food offerings and so forth like that are, a lot of money and time has been spent on that, and so an interest, being turned off by that, by being attracted by some level of discomfort or even hardship is something that is hard for like a lot of people to understand. But I think it really is, it's an important dimension of what some young people at least are seeking. Um, I remember, that the dorm there. So I'm a Deep Springs alum from the late 1990s. I was part of the first class to live in that dorm, actually. And the issue during my time, it was too new. It was too nice, actually. Especially because people had lived in the previous dorm, which was almost 100 years old and in a very different state. So that's a
And
familiar.
that, sorry, and that the previous dorms were in the main building, right?
That's right. Mhm.
And why did they, do you know why they moved?
Well, there was the building was in general needing a complete redesign because it was 100 years old and built with student labor back in the 19 teens and 20s, and so it had to be completely gutted and redone in any case. And they wanted to move have an expanded library space. The library was kind of tacked onto the old building, and then to have classrooms and offices in one building, and then a student dorm in a separate place was. I mean, I wasn't there at the design process, but it kind of completed the circle there at the campus. But,
Was there any well, usually stuff at Deep Springs that needs like a particular kick in the pants to get going. Was there like a, I mean, did we expand the staff or something, and that's why we needed more offices, or it was just one year we decided
It
we were
was
going
it
to do
was what's completed there now, kind of bringing to a conclusion there a real renovation and redesign of every building there, or with some new buildings and some rebuild ones, because they were in very poor condition at that point, and they had been kind of maintenance had been neglected for a while. So it was part of a complete redesign of the renovation of the endowment and a few other kind of aspects of the program, but including the buildings. So. Well, okay. So line that up. Thank you for that background, Max, and your story. So Ben, I want to turn it over to you now as the ComCom chair. So you got in touch with me, preparing a new kind of brochure that you're going to be sending out to the world. So you're thinking right now in your role about explaining Deep Springs to people who haven't heard of it. So what is Deep Springs? What should people know about it?
this is great. We keep it under like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
uh, I mean, the the one sentence version is that it's a combination ranch and college. So you do half time on the ranch, half time on the college. And the more I read, the more important I think it was that it's really modeled on like a Western American Western town. So the founder, L.L. Nunn, he was very interested in this idea that these small towns with a lot of hard work and then also a big emphasis on community, that was that had like this special quality. It could like it really led to the development of virtue and strong character in the people that lived in there. So Deep Springs is really built on the model of a small Western town. You have different labor teams that often don't have a lot of communication with each other, that run different parts of the college and the ranch. Students pretty much have some kind of hand in every task required to run both administrative and the physical labor aspect. Students meet once a week in committees to deal with particular aspects, let's say of the curriculum or of admitting the next class or doing public relations like I do. And then they meet once a week as a student body to discuss sort of internal issues and help regulate themselves.
Cool. Can you set the physical scene for us? Like, the location of Deep Springs is a really important part of its character and design.
Yes.
And it's a little bit hard to picture if you haven't pictured it. So can you,
Yes.
what is the setting?
Yeah. Well, this is the other thing. So it's an hour out of the nearest town. It's in this valley, surrounded, on all sides by mountains and then by some more desert. So it's quite isolated. We sometimes keep the cows, and there's a lake too. So picture a sort of oval shaped valley. You have a lake at one end, and then the college is more or less at the other end. We sometimes keep the cows. We have 300 cows. We sometimes keep them at the lake, and then in the summer we'll bring them up to our allotment in the mountains, which is very beautiful, and keep them there for a few months.
So the context here, some landmarks that people might know. This is the next valley or so north of Death Valley. About a mile high elevation. It is just to the east of the eastern wall of the Sierra Nevada, right? So you can see the Sierras to the west there. Just to the north of the valley is the ancient bristlecone pine forest. So some of the oldest organisms on the earth there, and actually in the cattle allotment are some of the bristlecone pines. And then it's to the east is the Nevada border. So it's right on the Nevada, actually has a Nevada mailing address. So remote location, the Great Basin, very, very dry and very like starkly beautiful kind of place.
Yeah, yeah. And you say Death Valley, I mean, in the summers it's very hot, but in the winters, it's we just got hit by a huge storm.
Right.
We're completely snowed in.
Those pictures of the snowstorm are kind of unbelievable.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the context. I mean, what is it? Why is the college why located in this remote location? What does that add, or how does that impact the education happening there?
Well, the campus is kind of small. Like the buildings that you
How
regularly
many
move.
students?
26 students. That's the other thing. Yeah, sorry. And there's only really like three buildings that you move between. So there's kind of there's nowhere to hide. Like if you want to find someone, it takes you at most, I would say, 5 minutes. Like there's two places that they could be, so you just have to walk to those two places and see if they're there. So for me, part of the value of the isolation in the valley is that it forces you to be honest and open with your fellow students. It doesn't allow you to be shifty or shirk your responsibility in any way. Like you're just constantly open to everyone's eyes, which is I think at first a disturbing experience, and then becomes kind of a strangely compassionate one. I've come to enjoy it.
Cool. Max, do you have anything to add to any of that? Feel free to pop in.
Well, I don't know if you mentioned the isolation rule, which is that you can't actually leave the school during term unless you get approval from the student body, and you can't have people visit you unless you get approval from the student body, which is the scariest sounding rule I think we have. But when you get there, it kind of just makes sense. Like I don't know really where you would go. Like you could go to the town that's an hour and 15 minutes away for a couple minutes, and then you're like, okay, I gotta go back. Um, I think that it's just like to re-emphasize the point that like when you're fully committing yourselves to the other 25 students and faculty there. And so yeah, it often gets branded as a cult because of this, but I think and this is a classic cult defense. I think it's just like the only uh the only way Deep Springs could function is if everyone is fully committing themselves to it. And so the isolation geographically and legislatively is like contributing to that.
Yeah. So that's the isolation in the place among the student body is certainly one of the things that people hear about. Since I was a student there in the 1990s, that period, the internet was just kind of a new thing, right? Like I remember getting an email account, right? A lot of things have happened that changes people's experience of solitude or isolation in community. Can you talk about how today and in the 2020s, what is the interactions there with technology or with the digital media?
In the last term that Ben and I just left, we voted to, well, actually, I didn't vote. I was the student body chair, but I was in charge of the meeting where they voted to ban the internet from all non-communal devices. And this is usually something that happens for a term or a limited amount of time. as a way, usually like during the first term, to make people have to like experience Deep Springs without the internet before they experience it with it. But I think this term we decided that there's really no point to experience Deep Springs with the internet. So we banned it permanently. So if you come to Deep Springs now, you'll only have internet access on 2 computers, and then that's where you can check your email and such. Uh, you can have your devices, but they don't have internet. And I think this, like, I haven't seen this rule really in action, but I think the response has been mostly positive. It kind of just is like further aligning like our values with our practices in a way that I think is helpful.
Yeah, so that's a great example of like, really programmatically significant, consequential kind of decision that is, that's not being brought by the administration or the board of trustees. This is really is being discussed and debated and decided upon among the student body. And that you read the kind of founding documents, of LL Nunn and the kind of historical kind of development of the college, even more important than the ranch or the academic program, like this self-governance component is really core to the idea. So can you talk a bit more about that? Like, what is it like to live in a self-contained, self-governing community of young people?
Well, there was this weird switch that happens, I would say, like 7 months in for me, which is that you come in and it feels kind of oppressive. You're like you're just trapped with these people. You're sort of always on your guard. None of the doors have locks. The internet's usually off for the first couple months, and now it's off forever. So it's like you feel you can start to get skittish or kind of you feel on your guard all the time. And then there's this switch that kind of happens where you start to feel like you start to feel less alone. Like you start to feel like the community's supporting you rather than surrounding you. And in fact, it starts to seem like the big cities where actually it's kind of lonely and you're kind of repressed or isolated. And this is one of the things we talked about in the internet discussion, which is that if you're on the internet, you can sort of imagine that would be an incredibly public or social space. But the truth is, it's really just you. Like it's just you. You just sort of find the things that you like and stick to them, and then move on when you don't like them. You're not beholden to anyone. It's really just you with yourself, and it's really like a deeply lonely experience, in a way that, in the same way that being in a city is, or living by yourself is, or working alone is, and ultimately being in this community, even though it seems very isolated, or it seems oppressive, it starts to feel much less lonely than these other places.
Yeah. Max, what's like to facilitate a conversation like that? I mean, you're restricting people's, or proposing to, really put some strong boundaries on people's day-to-day life, right? What does it take to hold a discussion like that among, a group of young adults?
I think visitors who watch our discussions are usually surprised at the maturity of them. Even alumni of Deep Springs are surprised by the like fluency we have with the procedural mechanisms of the situation, like the respect we have for each other. I think generally, even when we consider it a failure of a discussion, it's a pretty respectful and easy and like efficient way that we do it. But that doesn't mean that there's not frustration. Like I'd say that the number one characteristic of self-governance is communal frustration. uh, that students are constantly disappointed, faculty are constantly disappointed. As the chair, I've had to negotiate like student versus faculty like arguments and can like kind of misinterpretations of things that people said. Like it can get heated, I think, and it has gotten very heated. There's been yelling. Uh, there's been like I don't know, like arguments that have lasted for weeks when they should be resolved in an hour. Like I don't know. I see it as an ultimately frustrating process. But like this is one of the goals of self-governance is to show you how hard it is so that you can know how hard it is to govern people when you don't live with them. Like that must be completely alienating, completely difficult. And two, I think working through the frustration to find some common ground is a strange way to operate with your friends. And I think it's like actually a healthy way to do it with your friends. Um, Now that I'm back in the city and just hang out with my high school friends, I'm not really talking to them with the knowledge that my decisions about like where we hang out will affect their lives in this incredibly impactful way. In the same way as when I were talk to say like Ben at Deep Springs about the internet, I know that my vote is consciously restricting his actions. Like say he wants to use the internet, I'm saying that your opinion is not as valid as mine, which is never something I've had to do before, and something that I don't assume will happen very much in my life. And so I think like the value in it is just like that's super hard to do, and I need to express myself in a way that Ben can see that I'm operating from good intentions. And so it's just being honest with him, being honest with myself, just constantly, which is very tiresome, also very rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something quite different about, having a conversation face to face with someone. Often when we're, voting in an election or something like that, you are voting to restrict people's freedoms or to raise their taxes or whatever it is, but you're not saying it to them directly, right? And someone you're gonna have to go and milk the cows with the next day or have lunch with, which is another unique feature of such a small community. So you guys, you're two people who grew up in the city, in New York City there. How have you experienced the labor component of Deep Springs?
Good one.
Uh, I think that it's I don't know. I actually think people make too much of the labor pillar. It's like no one comes in knowing how to run the irrigation lines, and almost no one comes in knowing how to fix a car. Like some people come in with little like parlor tricks, but the truth is you're all kind of equally in the dark. Uh, and the truth is also that most of the labor is kind of already set up for you. Uh, and what's required is not like mechanical genius or like a ton of physical strength. It's more like I don't know. It's more about how you approach it. I think like you can tell when someone's coming at their work with like awareness and energy and diligence, and you can tell when they're just kind of coming at it lazily. So I think it has much more to do with you can always tell. You can always tell who's gonna uh, how people are gonna do on a job just by like how they're acting or how they behave in class. Like it usually doesn't have anything to do with their skill or their strength or I don't know what.
What are some of the positions you've held there in the last year?
I was, let's see, I did farm my last term. I was the mechanic. I worked in the garden and I cleaned the dishes, and I'll be sweeping the floors when I come back. Looking forward to
Max,
that.
what about you? Like, what have you done, and then what have you gotten from that experience, or what have you enjoyed and what was challenging?
I did farm once. I swept the floors once, and almost all the rest of the time I was in the garden. Uh, I was, and I did that an extensive amount. Um, what did I get from it? Well, I think when I think about labor, I only think about growing plants, which is not usually what people do with these strings. But I don't know. I went through a couple cycles of harvest and sadness in the winter, and um, I don't know. I think that it was like an experience of just like of diligence. Like I don't know. I probably watered like 10,000 times, and I'm the probably the most like rewarding experience I've had besides the garden is pruning, which is also in the garden, but that's where we like do give trees a haircut in the winter so that they can give us more fruit in the summer. Uh, and so I was this junior pruner this year to like my senior pruner like master. And then this year I'll be the senior pruner to my junior pruner. And so I'll see these trees grow up for 2 years while also like helping someone grow up as a pruner, which is like a pretty it's a pretty nice experience. But I just think that most of the labor pillar is just showing up for 4 hours every day, like when it's 15 degrees out and it's like a little bit snowy. Like, can you get into the ladder and stand in a tree for 4 hours? Uh, and like, yeah, you're not the best in the world. That's why you're doing it. And so I don't know. I think that like there are like some people who are obviously have some work experience that other people don't have. Some people have some like knowledge that people don't have, but like it's pretty easy for everyone to get on the same foot if they want to. Like and it's sometimes strange to see how able some people are. Like I remember during our snowstorm when we had no power, like somehow Sophia, someone in our class, just like knew how to run the generator and like no one else did. And I don't know how she did, but she kind of just like saved the school in that instance. And like Emma and Shreya like cooked these incredible meals through the snowstorm without like with limited gas. Like it was just kind of crazy to see people step up in like ways where you felt like you were cared for and they you couldn't care for yourself in the same way that they care for you. Uh, so yeah, that's one cool thing I've gotten out of it.
Yeah, so there's real consequences to these things, especially in a condition like that where you have a have a weather event like that shuts off the power, and blocks off the passes, right? You guys are really isolated there for genuinely for a while.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So pruning, I wonder, yeah, so pruning is something we actually do quite a bit of here. We've got a extensive vineyard that we work with and a bunch of fruit trees, and I find it to be such a such an educational experience actually, because of the decisions you have to make. I guess, is that something you kind of gravitated towards, and what about that as a is there anything you could say about that as a specific like knowledge base instead of skills?
Uh, I really gravitate towards it. None of my labor has been voluntary. I've mostly been told to do it. Uh, but I, is there a knowledge base? I don't know. I got really like intimately familiar with my tools in a way I've never been familiar with any tools before. Like, you have to clean them and take care of them, and they're kind of yours for a while. And so, uh, that was a that I had there's something very satisfying about that. Uh, but yeah, like the decision or whether or not to cut a certain like giant branch that's been growing for 10 years, like trying to decide what's best for the tree that you kind of just met, and that's it. Kind of it feels like they're like people at a certain point.
Yeah.
Like yeah, it's like you're also like kind of looking into the future to see what you think other pruners will do, and you can like do several like some markings and signs and signatures to make them to know to like say like I'm choosing to do this, you have to follow my footsteps. um so yeah, it's kind of like it's made me, I don't know, it's made me want to have some trees when I'm older, even though I want to live in the city, which is confusing, but
Yeah, I find it to be, pruning is a constant training in decisiveness, right? Like you can only cut or not cut, right?
Yes.
And it will have
Very good.
consequences. And if you don't, if you can, if you're indecisive and don't cut anything, that's also bad for the tree, right? And for the fruit. So you need to, it's also artistic and sculptural, like you're creating the forms. So
Max wrote a lovely essay about the metaphysical significance of pruning.
really, you
Posted it
had
on
thought
the
about this. I
bulletin
could
to
tell.
see.
I'd love to see that actually. I've thought about that too. Cool. So that brings us. So I mean, Deep Springs has really has a very like clearly articulated idea of curriculum, which is in the form of three pillars, right? We talked about self-governance, we've talked about labor, and then so the third pillar is the academic pillar. Can you talk about how that works there, and and how does it also interact with these other aspects of the college curriculum?
You mind if I take this, Mike?
Yeah, you got it. Your curriculum kitty, man.
Well, here's one interesting thing is that because because mostly people labor in the afternoon and then do their homework in the evening, and mostly they can do it in like one of two public places. You kind of can see who's studying and for how long before you go to class, which is like I mean, it's kind of a dumb thing, but like, some people are walking around at 1 a.m., like muttering lines of Shakespeare to themselves, and some people are asleep. And you know which people are asleep. And so there's no like, the classes when they're working to me feel very honest, because kind of everyone knows, like, they know, like, I know who's got a final the next day. I know who like had a horrible day of labor yesterday and couldn't do their reading as thoroughly. And I know who seems like they stayed up all night and did the reading very well. And so there's no like there's no weird withholding where you're not sure how much people know, or whether their point is secretly amazing and very well thought out. Like it's kind of like the people well enough, and you've literally seen them the last few days, and you know roughly where their head's at. And so that the emphasis in the academics is really on like it's hard to fool people is what I'm saying. So like with labor, there's I think there's a big emphasis on diligence and proving that you've thoroughly done the work before you pull out some flashy gimmick. Because if you do that, and I know that I saw you asleep at 10 p.m. or some reasonable hour the previous night, it just like it's just embarrassing. It's not no one thinks that's impressive.
Yeah, I think it may be obvious, but bears repeating. I mean, these are very small classes, right? Like anyone who is not on their game, that's obvious, but also like impactful on everyone's experience, right? Because these are discussion based.
Yeah.
People's interactions, their Socratic dialogues with each other is how it happens for the most part, right?
Yeah. And I'll say also, like, a seminar that's not working is horrible to listen to. Like if people are just quiet for like a minute and a half, that's just like it just makes you feel awful. So it's like it feels like it is treated as like an obligation. Like if someone's quiet for a whole class, it's kind of like a minor insult to you. It's like it's not just that they haven't done their homework. It's like you made this hour and a half of my life like a little bit more difficult, a little bit like a little bit more miserable. Like you made it so I had to bear the discussion. It's not like the teacher will step in.
Yeah, there's a way that Deep Springs makes especially clear that the education, the development of knowledge, the seeking of wisdom is a collaborative activity where people have to rely on each other as much as preparing the food for a community, or cleaning the buildings, or making decisions collectively. That's one of the ways that I experience actually those things playing together is this is also a team sport. There's also ways it's not just your own education, right? It is you're part of a collective effort in that way too.
Yeah.
I also think Ben kind of buried the lead, which is that the classes are super hard. Um, like they're uh, I mean, they obviously vary, but the you could for a seminar on a text of philosophy or literature, like the amount of work you put in is what you get out. Like you could spend every night staying up all night reading the whole thing and like get more out of the class. And so like often people do. Uh, and there are some classes that demand a ton from you. Like Ben and I took a Shakespeare class where we had to read 2 plays every week. And so it was just like this kind of like at the end of the term, which was a very sleepless term, it was kind of we just got this whole chunk of this major thinker. Um, which I don't think is common in college classes that my friends are attending. Like I think that at D-Strings there's a very much an emphasis on you getting something out of this, and you like having to work for it. Like the length and like rigor of the essays that we're asked to write it requires us to like to pour hours into it on our own. But also I think the best students are the ones who can take their class to lunch or to labor. Like I've had like 4 hour long conversations in the garden about someone's essay idea that they want to like expound upon. And they get like frustrated 2 hours in, they say they don't want to do it 3 hours in, at four they say it's brilliant. So like that kind of like dedication to your work is something that I really looked for in college, and I think D-Strings does it extremely well.
I
Yeah,
will say,
go ahead.
sorry, I will say it's not always conducive to. I disagree with Max a little. I don't think it's conducive to great writing. I would say that it's conducive to great diligent absorbing of uh, things that have already been written or created. Like Deep Springs is sort of a place that constantly is telling you to be humble. It's not a place that's telling you to take 6 hours and go think about yourself and the book that you want to write or the essay that you want to write. Frankly, unless it's like it's not that it doesn't want you to think. It does not that it doesn't want you to have original interpretations or thoughts, but it doesn't encourage you to spend a lot of time alone, which is kind of what you need, I think, to create something original.
Interesting. Huh. Yeah, so you mentioned that Shakespeare class, Max. Can you both of you, just to give us a flavor of some of the content, or like what are some courses you've really that you valued or will stick out from your first year?
I really appreciated the mandatory composition class we had, which I know Ben didn't very much like. But I don't know. I think that the attention placed on the writing was there was more attention placed on writing in that class than any class that I've taken, and so I think I became a slightly better essay writer. Um, I don't know. I kind of looking back on it appreciated my cosmology class, uh, which it was super fast paced, super hard, very frustrating for both me and Ben. But I think the like I don't know, doing STEM or physics at Deep Springs has as it's like it feels very healthy to do non humanities work. It feels like I'm like helping this part of my brain that is often not helped in like these very abstract seminars where there now is a right answer. So I don't know, that cosmology class stands out as like something where the ideas made no sense, but they had to make sense because they were right. Um, and so I don't know, that kind of processing was helpful.
I really liked our public speaking. I really enjoyed it. Maybe it doesn't really count, but it's like
I definitely wanted to ask about that, right? Because that's if you read into the back to the founding of Deep Springs, like all the rest of the curriculum is kind of kind of secondary almost to public speaking, and that's the constant thread of all, 100 and some
Yeah,
years of the school's existence.
I had no idea. Well, it makes so much sense. It's exactly what I thought. It's like it's the only opportunity that you have to uh, cultivate your individuality. It's like the labor is not it's not an opportunity to be individual or to have your unique thoughts, and the essays and the classes are not really structured for your individual progress. They're structured as like a communal activity. And then politics and rhetoric and public speaking, I think, is the place where you're expected to demonstrate that you're still a functioning individual capable of, going up and speaking loudly while everyone else is quiet about a thing that you like for 5 minutes, like taking up the community's time, and people like will be kind of bored. They'll have other work to do, and you're expected to just boldly take up their time with your own voice. So I like public speaking. I think that it's like a very useful counterpoint.
And this happens every week, right?
Yep.
There's public speaking, and just share a bit more about that. How is that structured? How is that formatted? And where does that fit into the kind of community life?
So you might do like 7 speeches in a year, or 9 speeches in a year, I guess. It depends, because the public speaking is only mandatory for the middle 8 months of the year. Yeah. So you usually do like 6 in those, and maybe you'll do it another few. Anyway, every few weeks you'll have to write a speech, and then Tuesday evening you'll have like, let's say, 6 to 8 people speaking, giving a 5 minute or 10 minute speech about a prompt.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is. My sense is that it's been the most consistent part of the Deep Strings curriculum. Sometimes it's had, there's been more STEM classes, and sometimes not very much. There's been kind of great book style seminars. There've been, lots of different professors have brought their own flavors and interests there. But public speaking goes back a long way.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
That was great.
So I think to me it points to to zooming back, right? We've talked about the place, we've talked about these different pillars of the curriculum. Like this is it's a 26 students for 2 years, so 12 or 13 people every year arriving there, doing this very intensive experience, and then going off to their lives. Generally they're going on to transfer on to some other institution to finish their education, to continue their education, and so why? So why? What is that level of the mission of Deep Springs? What is a Deep Springer like after they leave, and what is the purpose of all this?
That's Max.
Well,
Softball for Max.
oh yeah, I'm really good at this kind of question.
What's the purpose of all this?
What's the purpose? The Deep Strings mission is to prepare young people to live lives of service. Boom. Which is I think a purposefully ambiguous phrase, life of service, that like you're supposed to like drool and faint in front of your entire 2 years, and so that by the end of the 2 years you're like you know what it is, or you know what it is to you. But I don't know. I think that it's supposed to be like a man. I don't know. God, I have to answer this question. It's like the like all 2 years, everyone at one point gives a speech where they try and give their own spin on what service is. I believe Ben gave a speech this year saying that making the most money is service.
Oh, it's got to be one of those. Yeah.
uh, but I don't know. I have a friend there who's convinced that firefighting is the most like pure form of service. There's another one who wants to be a professor, thinks that PhD is the most pure form of service. I think it's Deep Springers go on to do a lot of different things. Like we had recently a alumnus, Andy Kim, who was actually the one who inspired me to go to Deep Strings. He came and gave a speech, walked around, talked to us. He's a representative congressman from New Jersey. Uh, he had some good things to say about service. We have an alumnus named Bill Volman coming to teach a printmaking workshop. Don't ask why the novelist is doing a printmaking workshop, but
Yeah.
he's coming to Deep Springs, and he's, I'd say, living a life of service in his own way. Uh, like I don't know. We hear all these stories. We had an architect come. I don't know. We hear all these stories. We listed all these people, and the common thread seems to be that they're all super interested in helping people in their specific way that they think they can help people. And they can. I think it'd be pretty hard to justify making a lot of money as a life of service as an investment banker. But I think that like the Deep Springer, because they're so trained on having to justify everything to everyone all the time at Deep Springs, then spends their entire life justifying their career and their work as service. And often it can be like as simple as like I don't know, like helping your friends out, which is not a career choice, but it's just like a thing that you do because you know what it's like to do that in the most intense way possible. Uh, so yeah, it's like an ever ambiguous, ever changing goal, but like that's what it makes it so appealing and I think so important.
Yeah. There's a way that the big question there, service, and there's a lot of ways you can take that is a perpetual sort of provocation, right? It's built into the application process, but also in my memory is that it comes up all the time. Like, what do you mean by that exactly? So that's the mission. I wonder, Ben, as we kind of come up to the end of our hour here, I want to turn you back over to you, the ComCom chair. Again, there's a student, leadership. There's these standing committees, the application committee, the curriculum committee, the communications committee. These are core kind of self-government functions which are led by student members. Really a key kind of experience. But what would you say to a student who is thinking about doing this? Like, what are the key things that they might think of as an enticement, or as a kind of a more personal reason to consider it?
Oh, let's see. An enticement. Well, I think that here's what I would say. I would say that the people that don't like Deep Springs, it's usually because it brings something out of themselves that's already there. It's not a place about hiding or suppressing things. Like I said, it's like a pretty brutally honest place. So I think that the people that end up liking Deep Springs are the people that uh, were were comfortable or like themselves to a degree to begin with. And the people that end up hating Deep Springs are the people that were sort of fundamentally uncomfortable with themselves to begin with. Uh, so, so this to say that I don't think there's a person for whom Deep Springs is bad. I think it's a revealing I think it's a revealing experience more than anything. I don't think it's like uh, I mean, it's kind of like a purposely completely directionless, purposeless experience. There's like a lot of dead air and wandering around and being useless. The worry is never whether Deep Springs will overwhelm a person or like twist a person in a certain way. It seems to me that the problem is usually whether it will reveal something that they don't like and can come to terms with, or don't like and can't come to terms with.
Hmm. Well, that's in some ways quite diametrically opposed to what Max just said. But also points back to what he said earlier on about discomfort, right? And I think that's something I'd love to highlight, right? That challenge, crisis, discomfort, um, whether that's physical or social or intellectual, like that's certainly something that I see as a key part of education. That Deep Springs, I experience Deep Springs offering really uniquely, and so perhaps that's something that the people might be seeking out as they seek to mature into adults, whatever they're going to do in their lives. So I want to thank you guys for your time today. And yeah, just wish you good luck in your second year. Really enjoy your time there in the Valley. It's a really unique experience. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
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 Thank you so much.